So Jennifer, it's great to be here. And it's funny, I've seen Jennifer for many, many years on YouTube clips. We communicate via Twitter, and it's always great to actually see the person and have a proper conversation. What I'm going to try to do is talk a little bit about some of the kind of key tools that you have deployed to help transform Toronto. And I guess just to start as an idea, change. Everybody wants progress, but nobody wants change, it seems. And so your communication techniques were amazing. That chief planner roundtable conversation. Why don't I stand up here?
No, we've got a microphone coming.
Why don't I just use this for a minute? So so nobody maybe heard. I was just saying that Jennifer, one of the key things with cities is it's all about change and transformation. And everybody wants progress, but nobody wants change. So there's this big issue around how you help to communicate with the constituents, the elected members, the mayor. Everybody's part of it. Your chief planner roundtable sounds like a really intriguing opportunity to get messages out to the public. How did that work? And was that an elected members in the room, or was it a professional conversation with the public, perhaps?
Sure. So is this one on? It is on. Okay. So Chief Planner Roundtables, I initiated them 5 years ago, and I'll tell you the genesis of them, which was that I was thinking about all these things that I had to do that I didn't know how to do. And I thought, oh, there's some people I need to talk to. I want to bring in some academics. I want to bring in some developers. There's some key community leaders that I'd like to talk to. And then I thought, wait a minute, why not make this conversation public? And so within the committee rooms in City Hall, we have tables that are set up in a semicircle, and then there's also a gallery for the public. And so the Chief Planner Roundtables are 3 hours long, and they're on a whole variety of different topics. The very first one was on resilient cities. We had a whole series that we called Next Generation Suburbs that were on mobility in the suburbs, built form in the suburbs, and then we had one called Arrival City, which was about immigrants in the suburbs. Because several generations ago, immigrants came into the core city, but now immigrants tend to come into the suburbs, and they don't necessarily have the amenities that they need. We've had a roundtable on main streets, on our ravine system and our ravine strategy. So the roundtables are 3 hours long. The first hour, there are 10-minute presentations by 6 guests who, usually there's a few academics, usually there's some of my colleagues who are within the administration, as well as other key stakeholders. I usually have a developer, someone from the development industry or the real estate industry, or someone from law who will be at the table as well to talk about the issue from their perspective. Each presentation is very different. And then we have a facilitated discussion for the next really hour and a half to 2 hours. But importantly, we trend on Twitter nationally in these conversations, and we also live stream the conversations. And the very first time I did one, we decided we would have people sign up because there's only a limited amount of space in the gallery. And within 24 hours, we had to put in place an overflow room. Right. And then we discovered that a lot of people followed live streaming as well. So, I wasn't sure, will people really be interested? Because these are, we have public conversations, and then these conversations get really detailed, and they're sort of inside baseball. Yep. And we discovered that people do really want to do a deep dive on these issues. And then we always create an action document, and there's a whole series. Growing Up Vertical is an outcome. That whole policy document, which has now been approved by City Council, is an outcome of a Chief Planner Roundtable that was on raising families in the city. And the question that we asked in that roundtable that we didn't have the answer to was, how can we make it more affordable and more desirable to raise families in more urban places? Yeah. And that led to the whole Growing Up Vertical initiative, which has been hugely successful and has really transformed the way the development industry is now building their projects.
It's a really useful thing, and you think that people aren't going to be interested, but actually they're citizens of the city, and so absolutely are. And I think that's been a really great success story of Toronto, is actually the city engaging with the people. We have an amazing group of advocates in this city, and we're quite lucky to have them. They're sort of the new generation, the new tweeters, the bloggers and so forth. We have a couple of groups who are pretty powerful, very helpful. How about your city? Have you got advocacy, people outside who lobby, and are they influential?
Yeah, sure, we do, absolutely. In fact, I would say that an enormous amount of the progress that we've made on our cycling infrastructure, because
Down to them.
we put in cycling lanes and we see increases in 600%. That we have truly become a cycling city. It's actually a bit astounding to go into our core. Cycling has become very normalized in a really short period of time. A big part of that is Cycle TO, which started out as a cycling union that grew very slowly at first, but they're a cycling lobby that came up with an amazing strategy. We have 44 city councillors, and what they did was basically create lobby groups in each of the 44 wards. It's a lot of work in order to lobby individual councillors, and it really, I worked really closely with them on our messaging, because one of the big things that we wanted to transform the message around was that cycling was seen as being kind of this thing that radical people did and recreational people did, but it wasn't really a form of transportation. And so the key messaging that we worked on was making it really clear that in the 21st century city, cycling is a form of transportation. And if it's a form of transportation, first of all, make it safe, and secondly, make it a real choice. And until it's a real choice, people won't do it because it's not safe. And the minute you make it a real choice, the evidence is conclusive around the world, people will choose it.
Do you have, I should know this, I don't, mandatory helmet laws for your bicycling? Because Jeanette's always told us, there's safety in...
It's such a hot topic.
Yeah.
We don't, except for children, under 14.
So that makes a lot of sense, So anyway, we'll move on. But it's interesting when you listen to people like Jennifer, we do know what to do. Most cities should know by now. There's Twitter, there's Google Maps, there's Google Images. We have been inundated with good ideas. The key question is how, and the Mayor talked about funding, and I think that's one of the critical challenges for Auckland, and Wallace and the team have been talking about this earlier. How are we going to fund some of the things that we need to do? If you think about London, it built its underground when its population was 1 million. We're 50 years after that conversation and now trying to retrofit a city. How have you, if you don't, just a couple of key mechanisms for funding outside of the rates?
So this has been a big debate in Toronto, and it's very, very contentious. But we do have, as a result of lobbying the provincial government for many years, we now have a suite of financial tools that we didn't have in the past. So we now have a hotel tax, road pricing is something that we can now use. Parking levies is a new financial tool that we can use. We have a mechanism that I mentioned briefly called Section 37, whereby it's section in our Planning Act where we negotiate with developers for an exchange and uplift in zoning. We take back monies in order to build infrastructure. So specifically, Parkway Forest that I showed you, that community center was paid for by the developer. The public art, the public realm, all of that was paid for the developer in exchange for additional density. So we use those kinds of tools and mechanisms. We now have a federal government which is on side and recognizes the importance of investing in transit. So we just had an announcement for the transit network plan that I just showed you. For some components of it that are still in the planning phases, $4.2 billion from the federal government. This is new. They'd never really, we weren't really on their radar screen before, and we've been working really hard with them to say, hey, this is critical to the survival of the country, is transit in our cities. And so we got the federal government to realize that there has to be a federal role in delivering transit in cities. It goes back to sustaining immigration, it goes back to attracting investment, it goes back to livability and sustainability. And the federal government in Toronto in Canada has been very responsive to that, and it's been transformational. You would never have seen that transit network plan previously without their participation.
I've got a couple of really quick questions here. One from me first, and very briefly. So you've been in Auckland, you're from this extraordinary city of Toronto, and you've been tweeting up a storm while you're here, one of them being a snapshot of this beautiful public sculpture by Michael Parakorwhai, which your bright-coloured Cuisinairs thing, which reminds me of those sort of rods. You love it. So be honest. What do you think of Auckland from what you've seen? Ludo, block your ears. Be honest, block your ears.
I'm confident it'll be all right.
Let me say the first thing, the very first thing that hit me very hard when I got here. Well, I'll be honest, I'll tell you the very first thing, because we just built a rail link from our airport to our downtown.
Here we go.
And I have to tell you, you got to get your ass in gear on that. That is.
Applause for Jennifer.
That's a very big.
We've got to get our shit together, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. But that rail link, ours, I felt like ours was 20 years too late. But I was coming in, and I kept saying to my cab driver, because I was looking at the traffic in the other lane, I said, I'm going to have to leave a day early to get to the airport to get out of here. So we have a fixed link. It's an express rail link from the downtown. It used to be an hour-long drive. Now it's a 22-minute, very comfortable rail link. It's been very successful. It's not without its controversies, but it is absolutely critical that you do that as soon as possible. I can't say.
How about that, Jennifer? Very good. Someone tweet that, by the way. I've got one here from the audience, and I think this is something that needs to be addressed as well. A question: in Auckland, the urban boundary policy has been very controversial and labelled by some as the main reason for housing unaffordability. Jennifer, this has been political, this issue. How difficult was it to get Toronto's Greenbelt policy adopted? And how important is an urban boundary for a city?
Yeah, so the first thing let me say is that it was really hard. It wasn't easy. I don't want to pretend it was easy in any way. It took about 10 years to get it in place. It's been in place now for 10 years. And there's an incredible myth that I'm sure gets perpetuated here, because it gets perpetuated in Toronto, and I've heard it from my colleagues in Australia as well as my colleagues in London and Portland. This myth that by putting an urban boundary in place, that drives up land prices and is a detriment to affordability. And you know why that's a myth? Because you don't have a hard boundary right now, and you've got a problem with affordability. So it's an absolute and complete myth. Really, the urban boundary is about a whole variety of key drivers. It is about the long-term sustainability and livability of the region. The risk is that you will continue to sprawl. You're adding 50,000 people a year. Imagine you're adding 100,000 people a year. Your commutes are just going to get longer and longer and longer and longer. I invite all of you to come to Toronto and to see our region, because you do not want to make the mistake that we've made. We are no longer having a debate about this, and we're no longer having a debate about investing primarily in transit and not building roads, in part because we have already built a 16-lane highway through our region that the minute it was built was filled with cars. We have an expressway right through the heart of the city that was built in the 1950s, and by 1960 it was at capacity, completely at capacity. So this notion that you can build a region that is sprawling and people can have a high quality of life, we've actually demonstrated that simply doesn't work.
Okay, we've only got 2 more minutes, Ludo, so if you've got one more burning question, then we'll move on for a well-deserved cup of coffee. Ludo.
Thank you. Just one question. We talk a lot about cities for people, and we do this all the time, and every transport guidance document, every manual says it's all about people, yet we continue to build cities that are not for people. What are your successes and learnings in Toronto around how to shift that paradigm? Because it is a paradigm shift. It's a really quite a fundamental behavior change. What are the kind of couple of key ingredients?
So the first one I'll say is that one of the challenges, and this is why I talked about precinct planning and delivering on the promise, and I think you're doing that right here, you're delivering on the promise. I think this area is breathtaking. When you deliver on the promise, you start to plant the seed that we can do things differently, that we can live differently. And one of the really critical parts about our growing conversations is that we don't want to put people in camps or put people in corners. The minute you put people in corners, you can't change your mind. You have to defend your position. Yeah, and that is a risk to our urbanism, is putting people in corners. We have to find what our shared interests are and then build the dialogue around those shared interests. We have a shared interest in a really high quality of life. Does anyone like a really long commute? No one likes a long commute. The myth of the long commute, I like to call it, this idea that you can live really far away, hop on a highway, and crank up the tunes, and it'll be great traveling. You'll have your latte, whatever, your flat white. I'm trying to be culturally appropriate. That myth has been blown out of the water, and so one of the really big things, I had a slide that I took out, which I wish I left in. When we did our transit network plan, we called the planning process feeling congested, and we talked about how we're all feeling congested. Our sidewalks are congested, our transit's congested, our roads are congested. And part of what we did was we consulted with people we wouldn't normally consult with, and we did it in different ways. And I have a newspaper headline, and it's written by a newspaper columnist who writes for our kind of right-wing rag, and the headline says, "I'm seeing the world differently now that I've seen it from a bicycle seat." And the first line of the article is, "I used to hate cyclists." And then the second is, "But all that has changed now that I've seen the world from a bicycle seat." And what I love about this article is that that was the goal of the consultations. The goal was to say, hey, can we think about the city in a different way that is going to serve all of us and be in all of our interests? And if you can figure out a way to have your conversations in such a way that it's not kind of the echo chamber of all the same people talking to each other, then you can begin to implement change, because people start going, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is a better city for everyone.
Fabulous.
Hey, look, we've got to wrap it up.
A
A massive round of applause for Jennifer Keysman and Ludo Campbell-Reid. It's been absolutely inspiring, Jennifer. So thank you so much for that, Ludo as well.
Are you closing?
No, you close.
Am I?
Yeah.
So look, thank you. I just got my list of things I'm meant to do here. Far from me to break from what I'm told to do. Look, before we break, thank you to everybody that came along today to listen to Jennifer. Jennifer, it's really magical having you here. We've got a whole day of Jennifer on Monday. My team, Auckland Transport, we're going to be immersing you in the bureaucracy and the staff. We've got amazing people ready to mine you for information and ideas, and already today has been brilliant. So can I thank you all for coming today? Thank the Auckland Conversations team for putting this on. I'd like to just thank Wallace as well for doing your great job, and also the sponsors for the program, which are up on the board, and I guess thank you to the RMLA, because we have partnered with you once before on this, and it shows you what we can do in bringing amazing people to New Zealand and to Auckland. So thank you to you for the partnership. Last but not least, Boffa-Miskel, who are sort of in a way our team sort of partners in crime in this changing city. And I want to shout out to Rachel and the team, and Stuart and John Potter and the guys who really are our partners. So thank you everybody, and Jennifer, would everyone give her another round of applause?